good morning and welcome to Kusile Breakfast Show. Sibonga kakhulu kusinikhethe kuvuka nathi lo mhla ekseni. It is a Monday morning, the 8th of January 2024. Sisema ukuthi nivuka kahle nebene phela somvo lenhle nale busisekile. My name is Lungelele Magagula. Kukhumbuta ukuthi you can also watch this episode of Kusile Breakfast Show on our YouTube page Eswatini TV. Mzomluko ke sita besibuka tindzaba tetemidlalo lebetendeka kuyo lemphela somvo. Siyakhuluma ukuthi bekusele ukuchubeka ingwenya Cup this past weekend emacembu nje lamakhulu asembabane imbabane Swallows kanye nembabane Highlanders achubekele esigabeni lesilandzelako senzebe ye ingwenya Cup kulandzeleka ukuthi incobe imidlalo yawo yekucala yalendzebe. Swallows ke incobe iLozitha Spurs kanti imbabane Highlanders yona incobe iPicks Peak Black Swallows. Tabe sinaya Linda Master Dlamini kusichazela kabani nje ngayo lemidlalo lena. And also on the other hand kutange phandle nje kwakuledi the FA Cup iLiverpool yona incobe Arsenal nga 2-0 emidlalweni yayitolo. Liverpool ke seya ku 4th round ye FA Cup. Will be joined by our sports journalist Linda Dlamini to share his thoughts kule midlalo lena lemibili netinye izindzaba letihamba embili kutemidlalo. And also on the show siphinde sibuke tindzaba tangaphandle kwakulethi sibuke ukuthi imtipi letihamba embili kulamanye emave emhlaba. Kanti manje sibuke nathi letihamba embili lapha ekhaya Eswatini this Monday. Siqala sibuke iSwatini Observer sibuka ihloko lethamba embili namhla. Azikuleto lethamba embili excitement at Ingwenyama Cup opener. Babana Swallows and Highlanders supporters are in jubilation after they won against their opponents during the Ingwenyama Cup opening matches. Nasagas Tombe more on the back page of the Eswatini Observer. Kanti lethamba embili 6-year-old shot dead by cousin. Girl shot once in the chest with pellet gun. The gun was stolen from safe by an older family member. More on page 2 and 3. Excuse me, kuletinye tamba embili concern over PS Gama's health. Kuletinye tamba embili Tetempilo TLC further downscales services. Asibuka temidlalo on the Eswatini Observer. Ingwenyama Cup last 32 through to last 16 and birds fly over Lozitha Spurs in the Tamba Embili kutemidlalo. Nasibuka Eswatini Daily News this Monday morning kuleti hamba embili. Eswatini Daily News sibuka leti hamba embili namuhla. The Prime Minister says support King in Ndlovukazi in nation prayer. Ngikusho Prime Minister. And also leti hamba imbili 7-year-old boy shoots kills girl with a pellet gun. Leti hamba imbili government is looking for 9 head teachers. Asibuka sports news on the Eswatini Daily News. Leti hamba imbili birds fly into Ingwenyama Cup last 16. Babana Swallows have risen from this week's ashes to fly into the last 16 of the SMVF Ingwenyama Cup with an emphatic 3-0 win over Lozitha Spurs at Somhlolo National Stadium. Kuletinye hamba embili Highlanders go Black Swallows. Kutange Pandle Bellingham is the world's most valuable player. More on page 20. It's 4 minutes after 6. Let's take a break. Benedin's about the sweating.
Umsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV utibophelele kuhlonipha nekulandzela umgomo wetekusakata loweluswe libandla letekuchumana eveni.
Ngephansi kwalomgomo sitimisele kusakata tindzaba letentiya ngaleso sikhatsi tindzaba letide magama laqosheme letitsembekile letitsinza tonke tinhlangothi naletisebaleni
kusukela kutepolitiki tetemphilo tekulima tetinkantolo netemhlaba wonke jikelele siniletsela tindzaba njengoba tinjalo ngaleso sikhatsi letenteka ngaso.
Kanti kulo msakazo siphinde sikulethele lonke luhlobo lwetemidlalo kusuka emidlalweni welibhola letinyawo kuye emidlalweni ledlalelwa ematafuleni kanye naleto letiqhamuka ngaphandle kwakuleli.
Leti tindzaba lowutiletselwa ngumsakazo wetitfombe iEswatini TV.
Welcome back. Asibuke nati tindzaba. Litiko letemfundvo likhutsata tikolo lofaka ekhatsi leto letitimele kutsi tibatsatse bantfwana labasengakayihlanganisi iminyaka lesithupha nabangena ebangeni lekucala. Umcondzisi wetemfundvo Dr. Lenhle Dlamini utsi sebayitfolile imibiko yekutsi tikhona tikolwa lesolo tingabatsatsi bantfwana labeta kutawubhalisela grade 1 uma bangakayihlanganisi iminyaka lesithupha.
Njengoba itikolwa setitawuvulwa litiko letemfundvo likhumbuta bothishela nhloko ukuthi balandzele imigomo nabatsatsa bamfana ebangeni lekucala.
Sevana sibabajikisa kuthi hayi umfana wakho uhlanganisa 6 late kakhulu abete tiko baweve ama guidelines bangajiki nje bahlale nemthana ketha nje lakana 6 umthana uyesikolweni noma ngabe lo 6 utamhlanganisa sekuphela le first term uyaya lo mthana lo ka grade 1.
Mandisa Ndlovu ungilomunye webatali lothi umfana wakhe wacala kubhala nekutifundzela angakangeni enkhulisa.
Be beautiful, everything was peaceful and everyone was happy.
Mana ngicela kumbona ana 2 kusiyakwati kufunda ngoba ngifuna kwathi ukuthi ngivele ngimikise ecreche noma ayocala ka grade R noma ka grade 1 angadlusi ngene kanjani.
Umcondzisi wetemfundvo uthi kusengakabi ngumgomo wahulumende kwekuthi umfana aqale kufundza enkhulisa kepha angavele angene ebangeni lekucala. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelsiwe Ndlangamandla yembabane.
Kunemvotsa yasehlane leselulama ngemuva kokulunywa yingwenya kuleli viki. Lemvotsa ithi imvula letine kakhulu tibange kugcwala kwemfula lokwende kube khona lesilwane.
Timothy Gametse ubonga lomdzala wetinsuku nebakubo kuphunyulwa emlanyeni wengwenya lebese imbambile naketama kwewela umfula.
Ngangena ngihamba nga 2 meters. Ngena nje lamandini ngathi nangithi ngangena nje afumbukwa yangibamba ke naye ngibamba lahle lethi into ngidiphethe ngithi awungase ngafa ngisho nje kanje ngingamemedi like ukuthi ngiya scream yini ngithi nje engingase ngafa yadonsa yona yadeda nayi deda ke ngizame ke kufaka sandla ke la ngaphasi nangifaka lesandla yangisika nje la tinyo leli nangithi ngizama ukufaka lesandla lesi uNkulunkulu amuhle sintheke lelikhala akutsinseka lelikhala ke bathi ke nabatiko wayitsinza lelikhala iyabaleka ingwenya.
Bucopho kumalinza bucela ukuthi lababuketilwane bafane babathathele lesilwane.
Mhlawumbe labo lababuke letilwane abamane bengibola bangibona betako lapha batosibukela baphindze basithathe ngoba sesingoti lapha nasesike sabamba.
Mpendulo Kumetse wasehlane uthi takhamuti natibikile bona ke basukumela etulu basibambe leso silwane lesesiyingoti.
Uma bekhona lapho khona kuhlopha khona ingwenya noma leso silwane ushayela nje inombolo yamaphoyisa insabamkhosi noma ushayele noma leso sifo sishayele khona lapho kugcina khona isilwane tasendle kukhona nje inombolo ethi hotline le 76 500 501 ngenoma 76996253 si phangise sifike lapho sitokhona kusitha sive singatofika singabe sive basengotini babenza etilwane.
Ukugcwala kwemifula kube imbangela yetimvula lebesolo tichubeka nekuna yeveni. Etindzabeni ngengiyeni Msibina Simuva Shongwe ehlane.
Umbeno kaMgometulo eNsaliche usebambe wangephansi ngemuva kwekukhanza lithuna lamkhulu wabo ligujiwe kususwe nenhloko. Emalunga emndeni yaseshacekile ngalesendo.
Kulekani Mgometulo uthi mkhulu wabo wasishiya emhlabeni ngeminyaka wanga 2007 bebasoloke banesifiso sekukhonga lapho yafihlelwa khona. Bamangele ke nakathi lomnye umnakabo uyacenza akhanza lo monakalo.
Uyafona futhi umnakho uthi hey ebafowethu la sekunemonakalo lamathuneni likhuna lithuna lamkhulu ligujiwe hawu ligujiwe yebo nathi lela besikhona sivele sijike mashishane sibuye sijake kobuka lela sathi sekunemonakalo khona emathuneni nasifika lemathuneni nathi siyawubona vele umonakalo hawu konakele vele ugujiwe nathi nethi igodo siyadibona letiba liphasi hawu kwenziwa njani ke manje nakunje hawu akushayele amaphoyisa babuye nebomthetho babe khona simgubhe sigcine-ke sifika kuye siyamgubha sifika kuye sikhanda ukuthi vele akasaphelelanga inhloko ayikho lolo ngaba nelihala ukuthi awusigangi ngasibona noma-ke ngambona umuntu ngesikhathi esengikuthi ahamba ngakhona noma akathi yele ngathi ibuda nami ukuthi ubhekaphi kumane kubanjwe leto tigaba
Emaphoyisa kalavumisa-ke asayiphenya le ndzaba kubika Giyani Msibingu Nasimuva Shongwe ensalitshe.
Lamanye eMaswati lalima sihlahla sensangu wathi angeke kuwasebentele kwenta kulinywa kwayo ukuthi kube semthethweni lapha eveni njengoba itawulahlekelwa sisindvo sayo emakethe. Inhlangano yeSwatini Cannabis Association yona ithi kuningi lapho live lingazuza khona uma lesihlahla silinywa ngalokusemthethweni futhi singalinyelwa temphilo kuphela.
Umsakado ngemgcibelo uthole ithuba lekuvakashela letinye tindzawo lapha eveni lapho kulinywa khona ngalokungekho emthethweni isihlahla sensangu. Sicocisana labanye balimi kuva ukuthi njengoba kunebungoti lobahlukene kuhlala emahlathini balime ngalokungekho emthethweni angeke yini kusite kuphasiswa kwemthetho losakhanganywa lobuke kulinywa kwensangu ilinyelwa temphilo i-Opium and Habit Forming Drugs Amendment Bill wemnyaka wa 2020 kanti batibekele kanjena.
Kusayiphelele sisi ngeke kusisite kulendlela ebakade usisita ngayo nyalo ngoba nawuthi yakunaka kungento ukhandele ukuthi bakukalele lokho ukuthi dilime lehlahla tibe ngi5 kanti mhlambe nganye mina bengimlima 20 wato nangilimele 20 bengathi nangilime 20 ngidakhothi masentikhiphe 20 lehlahla abantu abambatha khona kwesikolweni batakhonto ngibendela kongetshela bakuzengakho umndeni wami.
Ngeke kusithe sisi ngabe nje basemthethweni ngcono kona lokudla sibaleka ungqonywana kwazi waba semthethweni nawo tawushipha nashubela sangashipha phela.
Mengameli wenhlangano yeSwatini Cannabis Association Saladin Makagula yena uthi live litawulisita kushaya umthetho kepha uma ilinyelwa naletinye tindvo hayi temphilo kuphela.
iSwaziland is going to benefit athola inkumbi yemali labantu labade bebalima ngoba batawuthengisa kutholakala imali lento lena sida exporta emaveni leseka asembili kunathi lasana le machine lemkhulu noma singaqala ngolomncane umshini wokutesta ukuthi uyilimile insangu yakho gcinzi cause yakho insangu kaShewula insangu yedlangweni yona injani sibese siyayitesta ke sibone so le yakho inanako yona lesikudzingele usiyakhe oil yokufutha emakwabo noma yewaka oil wetinwele buka ke phela leli linye ehlathini letinto ledo ngeke sikwadi ukudenda ngayo. Kwesibili labantu abasehlathini sithi nababe priority kulomthetho.
Lo mthetho we-Opium and Habit Forming Drugs Amendment Bill nguleminye imithetho leyasala ingakapheli emsebentini wePhalamende lephumile iPhalamende eli-11. Edinzabente yeSwatini TV kubika Samkeliswe Khoza ngiseHukwini.
Amatiko lahlukene alungisa emaphakelo kulamalanga njengoba kubheke ukuthi ilitiko letemafa lethule emaphakelo enyangeni letako eminyaka temali ohulumende. Sive size hulumende kufanele yakhulisa temali etinhlelweni tekuthuthukisa sive etinhlangothini letahlukene.
Besibeka imivo yaso ngaloko lesifisa ukubona kumaphakelo eminyaka timali wahulumende lotako njengoba asebenta yona indzaba yemaphakelo.
Ngingathanda ukuthi uhulumende akhulise isikhwama sekuthenga emaphilisi noma lati ibhedlela kuba bede emaphilisi bese bamfula abathatha bathi khanzi bathatha imali yabo ipension yabo lekumele ngabathi jabulisa ngayo bayothenga emaphilisi emafamasi emakhemisi.
Mina ngingumuntu ngafisa ukuthi yati kumbe kukhuliswe lesikhwama sekuthi kusitakale labantu abasha ngoba nje sibantu abasha kuningi letinto lesibhekene nato sisakhula nje noma ikhona le mali yaka Youth Enterprise Fund but ngiva ngazuthi bancane laba labasitakalako
na kuma sports ke hawo thina sahlale sidojeka ngoba because ngiyangibekisa njengala kithi ematubaneni ukhanza ukuthi kuyogijinywa ngeshare kuboma Olympics noma kuma World Athletics kanti sekuhamba babili bantu akona kona lokushoda kwetimali.
Kuyabonakala ukuthi izinga labantu abakhubatekile abathola le mali bancane kakhulu. Kungaba kunxusa nje nekucela uhulumende asenda leyo budget ukuthi leli zinga labantu abakhubatekile abasitakala kule mali yakhe ngoba vele bayasitakala manje lenyuka inyuka.
Njengabo somabhizinisi labancane nje singacela ukuthi uhulumende asisite ngekuthi nasishajisa lesigubhu lesekufaka nogesi sicela asihlisele le mali noma nje ingabi khona isikole.
Kulomnyaka imali wahulumende lo setula indvuna yetemafa yetfule emaphakelo emali leng-26.4 billion emalangeni. Litiko letemfundvo litfole imali leng-3.96 billion emalangeni. Litiko letemphilo litfole imali leng-2.76 billion emalangeni. Kanti litiko letekulima lona litfole imali leng-1.63 billion emalangeni. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelson Ngamandla nginalinda Dlamini Yembabane.
Libandla lelingamele imfundvo lephakeme Eswatini Higher Education Council lecwayisa abatali nabafundzisi ukuthi bawahlolisise kucala emakolishi nemanyuvesi ukuthi asemthethweni yini futhi yabhalisiwe ngalokuphelele ngaphambi kwekufaka imali nekuthumela abafundzi ukuthi bayofundza. Lokhulumelana libandla Mihla Khumalo ukuthi bangahlola kuwebsite yaleli bandla ukuthi ngumaphi emakolishi labhalisiwe.
Njengoba umnyaka usacala nangabe bafuna kuyo apply noma bafake isicelo tabo kuma nyuvesi latside siyaye sikhuthadele ukuthi abacale phela nabo bazame kubuka ukuthi ngabe lapho bafuna kuyo faka leto sicelo khona manyuvesi noma amakolleji noma tindzawo tekufundzela leti semthethweni. Singisho ke siyaye silikhokhela uhla nje lesivame ukuthi njalo ngemva kwetinyanga letintsathu silupdate leli nala makolleji la private nalawo la public lasemthethweni. So lesingakwenta nje ngabakukhuthatha sive ukuthi njengoba sati lana ukuthi phela kufundza kuvame kufaka imali nayo lesiyithola sisebente kalukhuni kuyaye kube kahle lokuthi le due diligence siyende ungajaki nje lokuyo apply ungakahlolisisi ukuthi leyo university noma leyo program lo applyele kuyo lo applyele yona ingiyo yini lesemthethweni. Siyaye silikhokhele luhla liyatfolakala leyo luhla kuma websites ethu liyatholakala nakuma social media pages ethu futhi uyakhona nekuthi eoffice ushaye ucele lokuthi sikuthumele. Kodwa nje nangabe ulifuna kuma website uyakhona lokuthi ungene ku www.ishek.org.sz ufike ulithole khona.
Sihlalo we-Commerce Federation of Women in Business Athandi Nxumalo uthi le nhlangano isebenta tinhlelo letitawubona kuthuthukiswa kwelizinga lekhicita inyama yenkomo lapha eveni. Nxumalo uthi inhlangano yakwa-Commerce seyesekele inhlangano yabo ngemali lengetulu kwetigidzi letisiphohlongo temalangeni etinhlelweni letahlukene.
Inhlangano lebukete ekuthengiselana esifundeni lesempumalanga nalesendasi nelivekati le-Afrika i-Common Market for East and Southern Africa COMESA ligatsha labomake leyatiwa ngele-Commerce Federation of Women in Business COMFWEB luhlangothi lwalapha eveni liyachubeka nekusukumisa tinhlelo letahlukene letibuke kuthuthukisa bomake nebantfu labasha nemnotfo welive kakhulukati ngelihlangothi letekulima. Sihlalo wale nhlangano lapha eveni Thandi Nxumalo uthi le nhlangano iphokophele ukukhulisa umkhicido wenyama yenkomo lapha eveni njengoba basebenta tinhlelo ngekubanjiswa nguye COMESA letawubuka kukhicido kwenyama yenkomo.
Ulena le sithole ifunding yaka COMESA le yabo feedlot kuwenda bo feed ichubeka kahle kakhulu ke leyo kakhulu nje sibonga nebase Gunvini labadzala bakhona labasinika lo 10 hectare land sekwakhiwe tibaya sekwendiwe nje lokuningi mathanga sakhona nyalo nje sekusele kufakwe letibaya ningasho nje lokuthi lokunye lokusele kulamalanga kune besiyendile proposal yekuthi basendele le mali yema feeds. I think iya process nje kulokuthi kube kuvaliwe naka COMESA bayavula I think Monday. Nase kahlathi le project lena le ya 2 million ye abatho nayo ichubeka kakhulu siyacela ukuthi abantu ba support lapho.
Leli gatsha labo make iConfab likumave livekati leAfrika langemashumi lamabili kanzi COMESA sesekele tinhlelo talapha eveni taka COMFWEB ngemali lengetulu kwetigidzi letisiphohlongo temalangeni. Edinzabende Eswatini TV kubika Samkel Suyekhoza ngamanzini.
Inhlangano lokuthuthukisa abantu abasha kuleli Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries Eswatini itakuqinisa indlela lesebenta ngayo ngetinhlangothi temabhizinisi njengoba bantfu labasha abasenebulukhuni etindzabeni letiphatselene nemabhizinisi. Umcondzisi jikelele sekelo uvete loku nakachaza ukuthi yini leyehlukile labatawuyenta kulomnyaka kuthuthukisa abantu labasha.
Welibhangi lemhlaba iWorld Bank kweminyaka lophelile uveta ukuthi lizinga lekusebenta kubantu labasesigabeni sekuthi sebangasebenta kuleli lehle kusuka ku-50.6% ngeminyaka wanga-2016 lefika ku-45.9% ngeminyaka wanga-2021. Sikhulumisene nenhlangano yebantu labasha iYouth Chamber of Commerce Industries Eswatini kuva ukuthi yendane kukhulisa emathuba emisebenzi.
Sikhanzile ukuthi lasaqalile labasha abanga-register on businesses. Lokwenta ukuthi nawusiyababuta ukuthi abaregistileni bakutshela ukuthi babalekele i-tax, bakutshela ukuthi aba-understand ukuthi yini le-tax, all those things. So sizama ukuthi tonke inkinga lesitibukile for labasha for business. Sizama kwenta kusho ukuthi bafuna ba-register into steps sokuqala bafuna basende baphinde bakwadi ukupresenta ama-business plan because already akhona ama-platforms aku-youth fund nema-platforms ema-funding nema-grants, but inkinga ukuthi they don't know how to do about it. It's okay, u-applya njani, u-register njani business, uzitothola konke letinto. Then-ke nasibuka lokunye inkinga labahlangana nayo ukuthi naseba-registile nabanye amabhizinisi ukhanza ukuthi kunale nkinga ye-market research. Abasadi ukuthi kenyani where will they have to sell their service or their products. Then ukhanza ukuthi ngiyo lenye leyo lokuyinkinga of which we need to put ma-relevant stakeholders.
Umbiko we-World Bank uphindze uvete ukuthi bantu labasha labaneminyaka lengu-15 kuya ku-24 ngeminyaka wanga-2021 bebabukeka batawuba nebulukhuni ekuthola imisebenzi kanti lizinga lekuthi lokhu kwendeke beliku-59.1%. Hulumende wakuleli sewuvele utibophelele ekutheni utawukwenda tonke etaba kukhulisa emathuba emisebenzi. Edinzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Nelson Wendla ngamandla nginagiyani Msibi kamanzini.
Kutemidlalo emacembu lamakhulu asedolobheni eMbabane emidlalo webhola lekwiMbabane Swallows kanye neMbabane Highlanders asachubekele esigabeni esilandzelako sendzebe yeNgwenyama Cup kulandzela kuncoba imidlalo yawo yekucala yalendzebe. iMbabane Swallows incobe kuLozitha Spurs kanti iMbabane Highlanders yona incobe kuPickspeak Black Swallows enkundleni yesive kaSomhlolo.
Indzebe yeNgwenyama Cup eminyaka wa-2024 enkundleni yesive kaSomhlolo lapho khona bese ingene elangeni lesibili njengoba ngemgcibelo idlalile imidlalo le-13. Licembu leMbabane Swallows belitholana nelicembu leLozitha Spurs. Felix Spurs unhost ugadle kuqala leMbabane Swallows kanti wabuya wavalela lesibili Siphosethu Mabilisa leMbabane Swallows. Lesithathu lishaya nguSiyabonga Zwane yancoba iMbabane Swallows ngamagoli amathathu ecanzeni.
Gets Zwane. Zwane is in front of the goalkeeper. He takes a shot. What a finish. Beautiful finish. Beautiful control. It was coming and it was the moment. This young...
Emdlalweni wesibili lulandzele kube iMbabane Highlanders lebeyitfolana nePickspeak Black Swallows. Lo mdlalo uye ekhefini kulicanza icanzeni. Esigabeni sesibili ubese wenta tinguquko umcicesho weMbabane Highlanders Dumisani Makhanya wafaka abadlali labathathu lokungibanele Sikhonze naPhilane Mkhondvo. Lovele wenda lishintsho yena Philane Mkhondvo waphasela Menzi Sithole walivalela lekucala leMbabane Highlanders. Then Lisa Gama ubuyile wavalela lesibili leMbabane Highlanders lebese kulekucetha umdlalo waphela incobile iMbabane Highlanders amagoli amabili ecanzeni.
No. It's a chance. Oh wow. There you have it. A mistake of
iHighlanders kanye neSwallows ingena kumacembu la-13 ladlalile ngamgcibelo lesakwenta ukuthi amacembu ladlulele esigabeni sela-16 al-15. Licembu lekugcina litawuphuma emkhathini kweManzini Wanderers kanye neSisonke litawudlala ngalesithathu enkundleni yasemavuso. Ubikela umsakazo Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini eMbabane.
Umqeqeshi wemidlalo wegaluva wabadlali labancane Meshek Zwane uthi luhlelo lokufundisa abadlali abancane balomdlalo lusahamba kahle sola bacalile ukudlalisa umqhudelwano walabadlali eminyakeni lesithupha lendlulile njengoba labadlali labancane bakhomba kukhula ekudlaleni lomdlalo.
Siswati sithi ligotshwa lisemandi kanti zingiko kanye lokusolo kwentiwa luhlelo lolwatiwa ngelenomas Golf Club lelisolo lifundisa badlali bemidlalo weligaluva labasebancane lapha eveni iminyaka lesithupha eyendlulile.
We are advancing, but you've got to adjust. Otherwise, we are actually doing very well by the look of things. And also the advantage is now with social media, they are able to get information before even we actually teach them. So otherwise, we are doing very well. We are progressing at a very high speed.
Kanti bona abadlali abancane balomdlalo laba beyingcenye loluhlelo babeke kanjena.
I believe it's very important to obviously acknowledge the amount of time that the coaches put in to be able to bring out these kids to come out and gain the experience, and then obviously I believe it's crucial to start loving the game at a young age.
I've been playing very well, so I think I'm in a better stage in my career.
Today I played really good. I got 4 points, but my dad said if I get 5, it's okay. Then I said, what about 10? Then he said, very happy.
So that it's a peaceful sport. Normally people don't fight in the sport. So yeah, that's what I like about the sport.
Kanti solo kuvalwe itikolo ngenyanga yengongo neminyaka lophelile sakudlalwe lomqhudelwano emahlandla lamathathu kanti ngalesibili evikini lelitawucala bayitabe liqhubekela eMbabane Golf Club. Ibikile umsakathi Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini na Fabrice Msonera eMbabane.
Umphathi weqembu lenyanyali Celtics Mandla Dlamini uthi kungabi khona komceceshi kusifakile esandla ukuthi lelicembu likhale phansi emidlalweni walo neEzulwini United ngamagoli lamane kulinye.
Liqembu lenyanyali Celtics lidlale umdlalo walo ngaphansi endzebe yeIngwenyama Cup lide umceceshi. Kulandzela ukuthi lisekela lanompempe libasuze lebe basebhenjini lebaceceshi ngekuthi imininingwane yalelicembu beyiveta ukuthi lekumele bahlale kuleli bhenji bodokotela nebadlali kuphela. Umphathi walelicembu Mandla Dlamini loke waba ngumceceshi walo lelicembu uchaza kabanti.
Kunetinkinga leti khona isikole coach lesinayo bese nalomunye before siyahamba so bese zama ukuthola lomunye nalokuthi ke le system isakangeni system, but we are working on that kulunga next time bebakakhona ukuba add la kule team list lalabanye usifakile isandla because besikhashanyana le communication bengasiko lekahle ukubita ukuthi siyindlulise kubodokotela bengikhani fika kubadlalini. I think naloko kubena usiphazamisa kancane.
Umceceshi welicembu leEzulwini United Mpumelelo Ngwenya uyaveta ukuthi batilungiselele njani kunqoba lomdlalo.
Sidlale lenye izizame lenye indlela yokudlala le ngakajwayeleki kuloko lesesidlala normal. Mhlawumbe bekwentiwa ukuthi we rested some key players. Sibuka ukuthi kude mhlawumbe lithuba lesingalithola lokuthi sinike abafana labancane igame time, so we felt like lamhla asibanikeni so kunama positives. There were players nje like the young incoming lo lihle former national under 20 midfield sitholile ukuthi simnike 90 minutes simbone lokuthi iprogress yakhe ingakanani because kuliga abamancane lama chance ukuthi ungabanika labantwana siba ama underdogs most of these games.
Liqembu leEzulwini United linqobe licembu lenyanyali Celtics ngemagoli lamane kulinye. Lobikako kutemidlalo nguthanda kuhle Mdluli ngisenhlangano.
29 minutes after 7 ngale doti imidlalo siyathi phetha indzaba tetfu tesiswati isitawusa salikhefu sibuye netindzaba atange phandle.
We at Eswatini Television Authority are committed to observing the Eswatini Communication Commission's Broadcasting Code of Conduct.
Under the code, we are committed to broadcast news that is current, free from hate speech, accurate, balanced, and fair.
From politics to business, health, agriculture, courts, and global news, we bring you the latest updates as they happen, when they happen.
We cover all the sporting codes from the football pitch to the chessboards.
This is Eswatini TV News.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a look at international news. A U.S. strike in Baghdad on Thursday killed a pro-Iran military commander, with al-Hashid al-Shabi ex-paramilitaries saying it hit one of their headquarters. The attack came as tension mounted in the region amid the Israel-Hamas war raging in the Gaza Strip.
Chanting, "God is great, the U.S. is the great devil," supporters of the military commander al-Hashd al-Shabi carried his coffin through the streets of Baghdad. A militia leader of the Harakat al-Nujaba, which is supported by Iran, he and another member of the group were killed by a U.S. strike. For Washington, the killings in Iraq were an act of self-defense.
This was a necessary and proportionate action against this particular individual who was personally involved in the planning and execution of attacks against American personnel. The U.S. always maintains the inherent right of self-defense if our forces are threatened.
The United States says that since mid-October and the Israel-Hamas war, the American military based in Iraq and Syria have come under fire at least 100 times, namely from rocket and one-way drone attacks. The U.S. and allies of Israel are also being targeted by other Iran-backed militia in the region. Houthi rebels in Yemen have launched repeated attacks since November, in protest, they say, against Israel and the war in Gaza. On Thursday, a Houthi boat loaded with explosives detonated in the Red Sea, and scores of other Houthi missiles and drones provided by Iran have been shot down by U.S. forces. But the Houthi attacks continue to disrupt international shipping. A dozen nations have called for the Houthis to cease or suffer the consequences. The strikes and those by militia in Syria and Iraq have reinforced questions about Iran's intentions, or whether it's attempting to expand the Israel-Gaza conflict across the region. Washington says it's not seeking a confrontation with Tehran, but that the attacks must cease.
The Israeli army has dismantled the Hamas military framework in Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip. Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari said on Saturday, adding that the Palestinian militant group no longer operates in this area in an organized manner. The armed wing of Hamas said it continues to attack Israeli personnel and armored vehicles that enter Gaza. Nonetheless, U.S. military observers noted communication delays between some of Hamas's units and higher headquarters.
After 3 months of war, the Israeli army announced Saturday that it has considerably weakened Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip.
We have dismantled the Hamas military framework in Jabalia. Hamas no longer operates in this area in an organized manner. We have inhibited the area's main terrorism capabilities.
The armed wing of Hamas, however, said it continues to attack Israeli personnel and armored vehicles that enter Gaza. Nonetheless, American military observers note communication delays between some of Hamas's units and higher headquarters, effectively indicating a loss of command and control. The war in Gaza still enjoys broad support in Israel, with demonstrators on Saturday coming out to call for the rescue of the remaining more than 100 hostages held by Hamas. Yet, there are increasingly counter-demonstrations as another group protested the intense humanitarian disaster experienced by Gaza's 2.3 million civilians. Regardless, the Israeli Prime Minister vowed to continue military operations.
My government directed the army to go to war to eliminate Hamas, to return our hostages, and to ensure that Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. The war must not be stopped until we have achieved all of these objectives.
Military spokesman Daniel Hagari said the IDF is now focusing on dismantling Hamas's operations in the center and south of the Gaza Strip. He said the army has killed between 8,000 and 9,000 Hamas fighters. That amounts to a third of the Islamist group's forces before the war.
North Korea has provided Russia with ballistic missiles and missile launchers that were used in recent attacks on Ukraine in major escalation of support for Moscow, the White House said on Thursday. Russia is also looking to obtain missiles from its ally, Iran, as it runs short of arms nearly 2 years into President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
Significant escalation, says the United States. Washington accuses North Korea of supplying Russia with ballistic missiles and says Moscow has used them against Ukraine in the past week.
Our information indicates that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea recently provided Russia with ballistic missile launchers and several ballistic missiles. On the 30th of December 2023, Russian forces launched at least one of these North Korean ballistic missiles into Ukraine. And on January 2nd, Russia launched multiple North Korean ballistic missiles into Ukraine, including as part of its overnight aerial attack.
The arms supplies were widely anticipated since Vladimir Putin hosted North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Russia's Far East last September. It has given Moscow a badly needed fresh source of weapons for its Ukraine invasion, and Pyongyang is also benefiting.
In return for its support, we assess that Pyongyang is seeking military assistance from Russia, including fighter aircraft, surface-to-air missiles, armored vehicles, ballistic missile production equipment or materials, and other advanced technologies. This would have concerning security implications for the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region.
The US says it will raise the matter at the UN Security Council and will also impose additional sanctions on people facilitating the arms deals. John Kirby also said that Russian negotiations to acquire close-range ballistic missiles from Iran could be advancing.
Russia's defense ministry said it repelled a Ukrainian attack over Crimea on the same day, shooting down 36 drones over the annexed peninsula.
The Black Sea port of Odessa, Ukrainian soldiers trained to shoot down Shahed drones, the slow-flying bombs whose noisy propellers have earned them the nickname lawnmowers of death. The squad will likely have plenty of targets.
The enemy UAV flies on a certain path. The enemy decides on the target and launches groups of 5 to 10 Shahed drones.
Officials here say Russia has fired over 500 drones and missiles at Ukrainian targets over the past 5 days alone. 34 people were killed in recent strikes on the Kiev region, with 6 killed in Kharkiv. At least 4 people were reported killed over Wednesday night and Thursday morning, including one in the central city of Kropyvnytsky. Ukraine's air defenses have been remarkably successful at downing Russian air attacks, President Volodymyr Zelensky vowing to maintain that track record.
Ukrainian representatives abroad are doing everything they can to ensure the delivery of additional air defense systems and missiles. This is the #1 priority.
But it's not just air defense for Ukraine. Russia said Thursday it had shot down 10 Ukrainian missiles over the annexed Crimean Peninsula. Shelling continued on the Russian border city of Belgorod Thursday, following an unprecedented Ukrainian strike there on Saturday that killed 25 people. Front lines on the ground, meanwhile, remain largely frozen, with neither side able to gain much territory after nearly 2 years of war.
Ukraine's president says his country can defeat Russian aggression with continued and expanding Western support. This as Moscow's invasion of its neighbor appears set to enter a third year.
Workers in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro fight fires following a Russian drone strike Saturday. Ukraine's Air Force issued a statement on its Telegram channel saying overnight it destroyed 21 of Russia's 28 attack drones, without mentioning 3 cruise missiles also launched in the assault. VOA cannot independently verify the report, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says only with increased cooperation can Russian aggression be defeated.
To create an arsenal for the defense of freedom, Europe needs joint weapons production, much larger scale production than now. We see that Russia's aggressive ambitions can be stopped only where there is sufficient strength to stop them. And we will provide such strength only together.
Zelensky echoing Ukraine's defense industry head from late last year.
Now we're refocusing on making Ukraine the arsenal of the free world. We're focusing on producing all types of weapons and ammunition, and we show that we can test it on the battlefield and make it better during the war. That's something we can contribute to the free world.
In the closing days of 2023 and so far this year, Russia deployed nearly 300 missiles and more than 200 drones in attacks on Ukraine. And while Russia has relied on Iran for many of its drones, Ukrainian investigators and the White House say Russia recently began using North Korean-supplied ballistic missiles in attacks across Ukraine, a move described as a major escalation. Russia and North Korea deny the partnership. That doesn't mean that Russia abandoned its own missile systems, however, as Zelensky said Moscow fired its conventional S-300 missiles into Ukraine's Donetsk region, killing at least 11, nearly half of them children. Rescue efforts are ongoing. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine nearly entering a third year, Kyiv continues its push for material support while urging its Western partners to consider it a hub of allied weapon production.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump criticized U.S. President Joe Biden as incompetent during a campaign stop in Iowa on January 6, 2024, the third anniversary of the U.S. Capitol siege. Trump and Biden may be heading for a rematch in the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
Restart to the 2024 U.S. presidential campaign. Donald Trump was straight back into action in Iowa ahead of the all-important Republican caucus that will launch the race to the White House. He started out in Des Moines, courting young conservatives in the hope of wooing thousands who have never caucused before.
You're a good-looking crowd. You know, I usually don't look at people that are so attractive.
The second day of campaigning also marked the anniversary of the 6th of January Capitol riots, where Trump supporters stormed Congress in a bid to thwart the certification of Joe Biden's election victory. Trump wrote the book on negative campaigning, describing his 81-year-old rival as a man who, quote, doesn't know he's alive.
He can't put two sentences together. He can't speak. He's a threat to democracy because he's incompetent. I mean, he's incompetent.
Trump will try to capitalize on President Biden's drop in popularity, according to a recent poll, among Black, Hispanic and young voters, as he continues his campaign in Iowa, where he is the undisputed Republican frontrunner.
Focusing heavily on the threat, he says former U.S. President Donald Trump poses to American democracy. President Joe Biden kicked off his reflection campaign by pledging to make the defense of the country's democratic system the central theme of his 2024 campaign and potential second term.
The storming of the U.S. Capitol by Donald Trump supporters seeking to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory happened 3 years ago, on January 6, 2021. But the president wants Americans to remember.
Trump's mob wasn't a peaceful protest. It was a violent assault.
On Friday, Biden warned that former President Donald Trump's efforts to retake the White House in 2024 pose a grave threat to the country.
Trump won't do what an American president must do. He refuses to denounce political violence. So hear me clearly. I'll say what Donald Trump won't. Political violence is never, ever acceptable in the United States political system. Never, never, never. It has no place in a democracy, none.
Calling democracy a sacred cause and pledging to defend it, Biden launched his sharpest attacks yet on Trump, his likely rival in the November presidential election. Trump kickstarted his 2024 campaign with a rally in Iowa.
Biden's record is an unbroken streak of weakness, incompetence, corruption, and failure. Other than that, he's doing quite well, isn't he, don't you? That's a hell of a list. That's a hell of a list, right? That's why Crooked Joe is staging his pathetic fear-mongering campaign event in Pennsylvania today.
The attack on Trump marks a new phase in Biden's campaign, focusing on Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election, and the threat to democracy could be key to persuading people to vote for him as Biden faces dismal poll numbers, ending 2023 with only 39% favorability.
The remarks today simply demonstrate that Biden will stop at nothing to distract from the fact that he has the worst inflation in U.S. history, that he has put us on the brink of World War III, and that he has allowed the southern border to utterly collapse under his leadership over the past 3 years.
While Biden spoke, the Trump campaign said that Biden was the greatest threat to democracy and has weaponized the legal system against his chief political opponent. Trump has been indicted on 91 felony charges, including attempts to overturn the 2020 election under separate indictments from the state of Georgia and the federal government. He denies wrongdoing in all of them and leads by a wide margin among Republican primary candidates. He has signaled he will use the federal government to go after political opponents if he wins, prompting concerns about the trajectory of American democracy.
There are real stakes involved, and they need to be brought into stark relief. And I think Biden's trying to do that early on as part of this campaign.
On Friday, the Supreme Court agreed it will hear the appeal of last month's ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court that Trump cannot appear on the state's Republican primary ballot because he had engaged in insurrection. Maine has also barred Trump from the primary election ballot in the state because of his actions after the 2020 election.
Senegal's Constitutional Council on Friday rejected the candidacy of jailed opposition leader Ousmane Sonko to run in February's presidential election on the grounds his application was incomplete, said his lawyer.
The ruling came down just before midnight and delivers a massive blow to Senegal's main opposition party. The Supreme Court has now confirmed Ousmane Sonko's 6-month suspended prison sentence for libel against the country's tourism minister.
The state is in fact the kingpin behind all of this and has violated all the laws, violated all the international commitments, has ignored the rule of law and democracy, and has even changed the cultural values in this country. This is a state that has no limits.
Ousmane Sonko has been facing several legal battles and is currently serving jail time for endangering state security. He's denied all charges against him, saying that they're intended to prevent him from running in the general election. And his PASTEF party remains hopeful that his name will be on the ballot papers in February.
President Ousmane Sonko remains in the race. This is important. He remains a candidate.
Sonko's candidacy will be examined by the Constitutional Council, which has the final say. In the meantime, other members from PASTEF have put themselves forward to ensure that the party gets a place on the voting list.
It's 12 minutes before 8 o'clock. We've come to the end of our international news. Thank you for staying with us. After the break, we'll be speaking to our sports journalist, Linda Masatlamini. Welcome back. Sakuvusela nalo sanza kusivulela tsa Monday sibukade imidlalo lebetenteka kule mphela-sonto lesuka kiyo Ingwenyama Cup ngendlela hamba embili emidlalweni lesiyibone this past weekend. Two big teams alapha imbabane Swallows kanye ne-Highlanders made it through to the next round of the Ingwenyama Cup. Kukhuluma kabanti ke, we have our sports journalist Linda Masatlamini. Nkosi, good morning. Thank you for joining us lamhla ekuseni. Sitakumbula Nkosi ukuthi sayigcina Ingwenyama Cup ngeminyaka 2020. Ibuyile, how was the atmosphere nje kasomhlolo yitolo kuhambe kanjani?
Yeah, Lulu, ngivusele nembukelo Eswatini TV loyal viewer awuteka yona ibuyile ngonyama cup ngemva kweminyaka lengasho ukuthi cishe iyaya kule mine sayigcina nga-2020 kudlala yona ifinal lapha enkundleni yesivaka somhlolo babana Highlanders versus Green Mamba lapho khona yagcina winile iGreen Mamba so ibuyile kule mpelasomvo lapho khona yaqala ngemgcibelo kwadlala ama-games lang-13 kwashaya amagoli lang-43 kulo 13 noma games ngicabanga ukuthi le ratio le goal game ratio uyayibona lokuthi isetulu yabuya ke itolo adlala lamanye ama teams kasomhlolo bekudlala 2 games bekudlala iLozitha Spurs idlala neMbabane Swallows idlala iMbabane Highlanders idlala nePickspeak Black Swallows but kulolu ngicabanga ukuthi before sifike langeni la itolo nawubuka ngikhuluma ngalamagoli lang-43 kunama teams aka Premier League la ngasekho la kungwenyama cup lushatha akasekho esigabeni la 16 ukhuluma ngeRoyal Leopard ukhuluma ngeRangers awasekho lama teams lawo khona kungwenyama cup asadi ke ukuthi because le game 6 seleyinye nje kuphela igame yeManzini Wanderers nesisonke le game le ayikadlali kule weekend because umdlalo weManzini Wanderers bekafihlwa kule mpelasomvo lwasishiya emhlabeni evikini leliphelile but ukhuluma ngeatmosphere kaSomhlolo Lulu angadi ngine soft spot for Somhlolo the atmosphere nangasomhlolo ngiyaye ngivela emtimbeni ngathi angadi ngathi I'm like it's like my garden la ngifike khona ngithole kuphumula ngithole kuba refreshed because ama fans nawuthi ungala eceleni kweRoyal Box uyayikhanza iMbabane Swallows nawuthi ungala ka left neRoyal Box uyayikhanza iMbabane Highlanders and uyabeva throughout igame bahlabelela leti ngoma uyativa so ngicabanga nje ukuthi ngingako ngithi iatmosphere kaSomhlolo iyehluka ibuyile ke kuyadlalwa kaSomhlolo yes bathi kwanyalo kusetodlala ema games ngonyama kuphela but ngetulu kwako konke Lulu sidlula sikhuluma ngaye atmosphere ngicabanga ukuthi lesikubonile itolo kufakazela yona lengwenyama cup ukuthi iculture nebhola ubuka mshiya loya kule stand lesibuka neParliament bekunengatsha lapha itile itobukela ibhola evunulile kunalabo labatawo agitsa sibaca kunelithango konke lokho then bese sobuyela khathe ebholeni igame ekuqala Mbabane Swallows versus Spurs Lozitha Spurs uyabona ukuthi yes umehluko ukhona ukuthi Premier League first division but ngicabanga ukuthi lokutimisela kwabadlali Lozitha Spurs idlalile but kanzi ukuthi Mbabane Swallows ibe sesishintsha emagiya more especially second half igcine winile ke yona iMbabane Swallows ngamagoli amathathu ecanzeni igoli leqala lishayo nguye Felix Bedenhorst a very good free kick yakhe yena Felix Bedenhorst wabuya Siphosethu Mabilisa washaya lesibili la iMbabane Swallows lesithathu lashaya nguSiyabonga wakazwane iyawina yachubekela embili iMbabane Swallows igame lelandzele Pickspeak Black Swallows versus Mbabane Highlanders itsite ile game lena first half time iphele nga 0-0 beka frustrated ama-fans Highlanders kubuka abadlali labasebhenchini ebhenchini beka khona phela nomkhonvu lo captain wale team banele Pupu Skhonze Kenneth Molotho cishe bonke labadlali labo bebasebhenchini bayicela ngaphandle bathi tena bangena half time wawubona lo mehluko second half less than 10 minutes umehluko wentile phela nomkhondo wathatha ama players on wafika waphasela yena Menze wakasithole walishaya Menze Sithole legoli ekuqala layo iMbabane Highlanders lesibili leMbabane Highlanders shayo ngidelisa wagama i-left back yayo iMbabane Highlanders yes ngicabanga ukuthi goalkeeper wayo iBlack Swallows bekaphumile kancane epalini because ulishaye yesikhashanyana igcine winile ke yona imbabane Highlanders 2-0 ku Pittsburgh Black Swallows yaqhubekela khona ku last 16 lokusho ukuthi nje ama Giants lang 2 ebhola yakangwane noma asembabane lokuyimbabane Highlanders mabone Swallows akhona ku last 16 sekushoda ke lelenye luta complete the big 3 iManzini Wanderers njengoba ngisho ukuthi badlala nesisonke ngalesithathu emavuso sengikhohlwa lenye i-team lephumile iMonen Pirates didn't atihambi kahle atihambi neze nani kahle iphumile yona iMonen Pirates kungwenyama cup lokusho ukuthi ku last 16 ikhona imbabane Highlanders ikhona imbabane Swallows ikhona nginaku sengiphosa ngibali Wanderers ikhona Denver ikhona Young Buffaloes ikhona iNsingizini North Spurs ikhona iSeabirds cishe lama teams la ngathi makhulu akhona then Madlenya ikhona iLovo ikhona Thabankulu Celtics leshaye yona iRoyal Leopard kuma penalties ikhona iyachubekela khona ku last 16 ngicabanga nje ukuthi ema games swabonile ama defending champions ngeke ngize ngwakhohle defending champions ayingwenyama cup achubekele ku last 16 awina enhlangano kunyenyalise Celtics lenye i-team liyawina iZulu United yawina 4-1 ichubekile ku last 16 sabona kule game leyo mbucuko Dlamini ashaya amagoli angu4 egameni iyodwa ngicabanga ukuthi all round nje Lulu nawubuka ukuthi 48 wamagoli lashayiwe emidlalweni leng15 ngicabanga ukuthi lokho kuhle kakhulu esikhathile ukuthi ku last 16 lamagoli achubeka ashaywe sisibone ama fans angena sibone bamvu nje bangena sibonile ke Lulu itolo ngicabanga ukuthi even nebamvu labakhulu even bebakhona abantu babenkosi bebakhona Minister of Sports bekakhona cishe emphathi webhola FA bekakhona chairman Premier League bekakhona bonke nje bamvu MVA staff besikhona because sponsor sale tournament lena bekukuhle kakhulu kule weekend.
Alright, thank you so much Ngozi Simakhulu Mbukeli. There you have it. Kamandi nje bachazela master ngengwenyama cup ukuthi ihambe kanjani. It's only a minute left to 8 o'clock. We've come to the end of our show. Thank you for joining us. You can still watch this episode on our YouTube page.